Okay, I have the Leagoo Alfa 6 as a 3G Android phone. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the specs first. I'm going to show you it closer up, all the sides and all the ports, etc. Then at the end I'll give you my impressions of it and if I recommend it. Okay, so it uses an MTK 6582 processor, which is an ARM Cortex-A7 1.3 GHz, 4 core, so it's quad core, and it has 1 GB of RAM at 533 MHz. Its GPU for graphics is an ARM Melee 400 MP2 500 MHz, 2 cores. Now previously I reviewed another smartphone that actually came out more recently by VK World, and that one uses a newer version of Android, but its GPU is not as good. It used an MP1, this uses an MP2, and it was 1 core, this is 2 core, and this one's screen is much more responsive, and I'll tell you any differences I notice as we go along. It has 8 GB of internal storage, but you can also put in a micro SD card into it up to SDHC, which is I think around about up to about I think 16 GB I think they normally go up to. And its screen is a 4.5-inch screen. The other one used a 5-inch screen, and I definitely wouldn't want a smartphone with a screen bigger than 5 inches. I think 5 inches is just right, but 4.5 is good as well, and I wouldn't want one. I definitely wouldn't really want one these days smaller than about 4.5, but this is a good screen, good size screen. It doesn't feel too small at all. It's an IPS screen, so if you tilt it at different angles, it's not going to look too different or too bad. Unlike, say, the old ATM bank machines that would have like a white tinge if you moved your head a bit. It's not going to be like that with this screen. It's IPS with a resolution of about 480 by 854, and it's 24-bit color. It's multi-touch. Its battery is smaller than the battery on the other one, though. It's a removable 1600 mAh battery. The other one was about 2200. This is 1600. So it is a bit of a smaller battery. In both phones, the batteries are removable and replaceable. The other one used 5.1 Lollipop version of Android. This is 4.4.2 KitKat. But this is still a good version of Android because a lot of apps you see in the Google Play Store require KitKat or above. So as long as you have KitKat like this does, you should be good. Most things should still work. In fact, I've played quite new games on here to test out, quite new 3D games, and they've worked fine. So I definitely wouldn't want to buy a phone these days that had a version of Android older than KitKat, but KitKat or newer is fine. So KitKat is still perfectly usable, perfectly acceptable. It uses Wi-Fi, and it's not the very latest AC, but that isn't in really any phones of this price range. It's normally the more expensive, latest model, new phones of Samsung or iPhones. It is 802.11n, which is the version before the latest, and it's perfectly usable for mobile phone usage. These days you'd probably want AC on your computer or your laptop, but on a smartphone, N is still usable, and it has Bluetooth 4.0. Some other phones, even at this sort of price range, and new phones, sometimes will use Bluetooth 3.0. This is 4.0, which is good. It does have built-in GPS and GPS-A, and unlike the other one, when they say that this is dual SIM, they are absolutely correct. Now, the thing I pointed out in a review of the other phone by the other company was they advertised it, both the sellers and the company themselves, even on the product page on the company website, the manufacturer's website, they advertised the other one as being dual SIM, and that was very misleading because what it had was one SIM card slot and a micro SD card slot. Now that is not what I think of when I hear dual SIM. I think of it having 2 SIM card slots, which is really what it does mean. So it's a bit misleading. This one is not misleading at all. This has 2 SIM card slots plus a micro SD card slot. So it has 3 slots, 2 SIM card slots, although you don't have to use both, you can just use one if you want, and that's all I've been using. And there is a micro SD card slot. So this is truly dual SIM. This is not one SIM and an SD, so this isn't basically false advertising, which is kind of what I consider the other one to be. Though the other one is definitely made by a Chinese company. I don't know where this company's from. The other one is a Chinese company, so maybe it's just an innocent mistake in the translation or something. I don't know. But the other one said it was dual SIM. It was not. This truly is dual SIM. As I mentioned, it has a micro SD card slot up to SDHC. It has an accelerometer, and that is to sort of gauge movement, so, you know, the tilt of the screen, things like that. That can also be used to get more accurate kind of pedometer stats if you're using things like Google Fit. But it's primarily used for things like if you tilt the screen vertically, it'll change the orientation, things like that. It does have that, and it has two cameras, one on the front, one on the back, as a lot of phones do these days. And it's pretty good resolution, at least on the one on the back, which tends to be the better one on smartphones. The one facing the back, because that's the one you got to like hold up and do recording of. So the one that's on the front for video chatting tends to be lower resolution, and it's the same with this one. The main camera, the primary camera, has a resolution of 2560 by 1920, so pretty good resolution, and that is for photographs. And it's about a 5 megapixel camera. It's not quite, it's 4.92 megapixels, so about just under 5 megapixels, and it's capable of recording video of 720p HD at 30 frames a second, and it does support geotagging. Now that is a little bit of a letdown, because some other smartphones, even at this price range, are capable of 1080p video on their primary camera, even up to 60 frames a second. So I'm surprised that this doesn't at least do 60 frames a second on 720p, but it doesn't, and it also is not 1080p HD, it's 720p HD. So that's something to bear in mind. It's still perfectly usable, especially if you're only wanting that camera for the occasional taking a little video of an event you're at, or in an emergency you need to whip your phone out and record something, maybe like a car accident or something or whatever. It's more than usable, but just bear in mind some other smartphones do have 1080p cameras these days, or even 4K cameras, although not at this price range. This is only 720p video. Now camera 2, which is the front-facing camera, is of course lower resolution, although he's still pretty good for still photographs. He's 1600 by 1200 pixels, and he's roughly 2 megapixels. He's 1.92 megapixels. He isn't capable of 720p video. He is only 640 by 480 resolution for video. Now, like I say, a lot of smartphones now, even at this price range, will have the primary back-facing camera 1080p. Then the front-facing camera will tend to be 720p. This one is 720p primary and only 640 by 480 at the front. So that's something to bear in mind if the camera is important to you. It is, I think I mentioned at the beginning anyway, it is a 3G phone. It's not 4G, but it's not just 2G either. It supports 2G and 3G. And the battery has a 3G talk time of up to 5 hours and a 3G standby time of up to 160 hours, which is pretty good. You might shop around a bit, because at the time of making this video, I actually can't find this on Amazon, so you might have to shop around a bit. But he seems to be priced at around £37 in the UK, or around about $52 or $55 in the US. So he is very much a budget smartphone. But the one thing I'd like to point out is this does have a smaller battery than the other one I reviewed, but I would actually buy this one. I'd recommend this one over the VK800X. And why is that? Well, yes, this one doesn't use a lollipop, and that's a pity. That's a bit of a downside, to be honest. But this one has a better GPU. It has a MP2 at 2-core, not a single core. And also, the big letdown I really had with the other phone was its touchscreen. To say it was unresponsive is not quite the right way to describe it. It wasn't so much the responsiveness as when you press something, it would understand it, it took it. But the it was kind of out of place, if you will. So say you want to hit the space bar, it would almost always hit the V key above the space bar. It was very hard to hit the actual space bar. If you want to type, say, a Facebook post, you might have all the words joined together with the letter V where you think you've actually hit the space. It's like the calibration was off. And I did try using a free touchscreen calibration tool that was on the Google Play Store, and it helped a teeny bit maybe, but it was still not really very good. So that was a real letdown to that. Even though it had Lollipop and a bigger screen, it had a GPU that wasn't as good and a very, very, very frustrating touchscreen. This touchscreen is by no means perfect. It's not as good as a touchscreen you're going to get on, say, an iPhone, but then it is a fraction of the price. But still, it's more than usable. That's the point. This costs around about the same price as the other one, but it has a better GPU and a usable touchscreen that isn't really frustrating and annoying and is going to drive you up the wall like the other one. In the box, you get, of course, the phone itself and also a micro USB cable to charge it. It charges with a port on top, not at the bottom like most. There is also a headphone jack on top, so you can plug in a 3.5mm headphone cable into the top. And there are some markings down the bottom. I'm not sure if you can see it from this distance, but there's like a back button, a home button, which is also where you hold down the home button and you can close any apps you have open, basically the app switcher. And there's a back button there. I'm going to show you it closer up and I'll show you it turned on in just a sec. Okay, that is basically it turned on there. I'm not going to show you all the menus because Android is Android. This is not an Android review or tutorial. There's a little picture of a dog in the background there. That's not a default picture. You can use your own custom wallpapers, and there is a theme option there to change the different icons. And what I'll just show you in a minute is how responsive the touchscreen is, and I might show you a 3D game open just to show you 3D. I'm not sure how well you can see that because it's quite small, but it is a 3D game. It is a 3D game there running. It is probably not the best example. I was just trying to find one quickly just to prove that it does do 3D in games fine. Basically, there's a game running on it there. It probably isn't the best test. The good test I used on the other phone was MetaMo, but I don't have that installed currently on this one actually. I just looked quickly. But yeah, basically, it does run 3D. It runs 3D fine. And it runs quite newly released 3D games fine. Like I said, it does actually have a 2-core GPU versus a 1-core, and it is a MP2, not an MP1 like in the other phone. So that is actually quite good. So it actually holds up with 3D pretty well. Alright, I'd just like to show you that if you hit theme from the home screen, Leagoo also provides its own UI customizer here, so you can not just select your different wallpapers and your live wallpapers, but select from some different themes here that you can also add some more via the online option in the top right corner. And that means it actually not just customizes a wallpaper, but customizes other things like the icons as well. So that's actually pretty good, because that is something that isn't Android, it's something they've added and installed on this phone themselves, the company that makes this phone, which is quite a nice little bonus. Like I say, I'm not going to show you all the other bits to the Android and stuff. I just want to show you that it will boot into a game and show you this unique little option here. Okay, I'm not sure how well you can see this on camera because it isn't particularly obvious, but to open it up and put the SIM card in, or your micro SD card, or to take the battery out, or whatever, basically you just pry the two pieces off. You basically pry the back cover off, and to do that you basically get your nail, or if you struggle then maybe something else if you're careful, but basically get your nail into this little nook that's on the bottom. See here on the bottom there's a little nook, a little slit, so you can get your nail in there and start prying it off, and then gradually you can pry around all the edges and get it off. Then when you want to put it back on, you just overlap it, put the back cover on, overlap it, and start clicking all around the edges, and make sure all the edges are clicked back in. You hear a little snick sort of sound as you go along. Very straightforward to take the back off and put it back on. And you won't have to do that very often anyway, because chances are you just go put your SIM card in and maybe your SD card in, and that'll be it for a very long time. So it's very straightforward to take the cover on and off. So what do I think of it? I'm actually quite impressed by it, because I previously reviewed another Android and it has a bigger battery and a newer Android operating system installed. But the fact of the matter is, it was so frustrating. I found the touchscreen was so annoying. And you don't want that from a phone. You don't want to be trying to type a SMS or a online post, like a Facebook post, and have where every time there should be a space, there's a V and stuff. It's so annoying, so frustrating. You keep having to delete and go back and replace like a V with an actual space that you carefully, slowly press. And it was just a bit of a pain. This one has a 4.5-inch versus 5-inch screen, but it is very responsive, absolutely good, perfectly acceptable. And it does have a better GPU, which of course is going to be better for any 3D content, such as 3D games, things like that. That is really good. So if I had to buy this one or the other one, even though the other one might have come out slightly more recently and have a slightly newer Android operating system, I would actually go for this one, because it has a better graphics card, better GPU, and has a better touchscreen that actually works. So I actually recommend this one. I recommend the Leagoo Alfa 6, good budget Android phone. So I hope this has been useful for you. Please like and comment on this video, and if you could do me a huge favour and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as it just takes a few seconds and will help me out a lot. Also, if you're watching this as a review on Amazon, on the Amazon product page, please hit the helpful or useful button. That will help me out a lot too. Thanks for watching.